Let me say it like this. If you don't define your story, the internet will do it for you. And the internet is not a licensed professional. It will misquote you, meme you, cancel you, and sell hoodies about it. Welcome back to the Chalk Talk Book Club, where we read the books athletes should be reading, and we build legacies that don't evaporate when the season ends. Hey y'all, it's Lee, sports attorney, tax nerd, athlete agent, former college English professor, which means I can break down a metaphor and a contract clause in the same breath. Today we're starting a new book, Impact Beyond the Game, How Athletes Can Build Influence, Monetize Their Brand, and Create a Legacy by Malcolm Lemmons. This is part 1, covering chapters 1 through 6, and then later today, part 2 will drop, covering chapters 7 through 12. And just FYI, the principles in this book apply to every level, including pros, because whether you're a freshman with your first NIL deal or a veteran trying to protect a career and build after, the problem is the same. Attention is currency, trust is capital, and character is collateral. Quick note, I'm not giving legal advice on this podcast. I'm giving education, strategy, and the kind of truth that saves people money and heartbreak. So let's talk about the introduction. Lemmons opens the book with something I wish more athletes heard before they're in a crisis. He says he didn't even know what a personal brand was during his playing career, and then realized it was being built without him. And that's the line right there. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. You already have a brand. The only question is whether you're the author or you're letting somebody else be your ghostwriter. And also throughout this Chalk Talk Book Club, I'm going to connect this to our integrity episodes. When leadership fails, when decision-making collapses, the damage isn't just personal, it spreads. Same with branding. If you don't protect your name becomes public property. Lemmons defines personal brand basically as your reputation, how people perceive you, and the emotion they attach to your name. So let me say it in a more Lee way. Your brand is what people believe about you when you're not in the room, and what they feel about you before you ever speak. That's why I'm so big on integrity, because you can manufacture hype, but you can't fake trust forever. Truth has a long memory. Lemmons walks through athlete branding history, with of course Michael Jordan as the blueprint, and then, and this is important, you don't have to be the best player on a team to build a powerful brand if you learn how to build your platform strategically. That matters for today's NIL world because NIL is not a stats-only economy. Brands don't pay for your GPA, although your GPA is very important. They pay for reach, plus resonance, plus reliability. Now, let me sprinkle a little Coach Prime in here because Dion talks about setting the thermostat for your day, controlling the environment and the mindset before the noise hits. That's branding too. Brand building is daily. It's habits, it's consistency, it's what you repeatedly do until the world says that's who they are. So Lemmons sets the stage. Either guide and cultivate your brand or let it be defined for you. Now, chapter 1 gets blunt about why this isn't optional. Chapter 1 is entitled, Why All Athletes Have to Build Their Personal Brand. And this is basically Lemmons grabbing athletes by the metaphorical face mask and saying, this moment you have, this attention, it has an expiration date. And he emphasizes that being an athlete is a privilege, not an obligation, which should make you more intentional about maximizing the opportunity. The faith-filled translation here, it's stewardship. If God hands you a platform, you don't bury it in the ground and call that humility. You manage it well. Lemmons talks about athletes struggling after sports because their identity never expanded beyond athlete. And that's a very real thing. And it's why I harp on this with any young player that'll listen. If the only thing you can say about yourself is your position and your highlights, you are one injury away from an identity crisis. Brand building done right forces you to answer the following questions. Who am I beyond the scoreboard? What do I stand for? What do I want to build that lasts? Lemmons makes the point that careers are short and attention fades. minimizing the myth that fame lasts forever. And this connects straight, once again, to integrity. If you think the world is loyal to you because you're talented, you're going to learn a painful lesson. The real asset is not talent alone. It's character, consistency, and relationships. And what about being a role model? Now, Lemmons in the book raises the age-old "I'm not a role model" debate and pushes back with the idea that whether you like it or not, the spotlight assigns influence. The only choice is whether you're a good example or a bad one. And that's kind of my character clause brain talking there. You can't say, "I don't want responsibility," and still take the benefits of visibility. Influence comes with receipts. So the wrap up for chapter 1, modern branding is an attention economy. If fans are paying attention elsewhere, you lose value. So, as Lemmons says, start building today. Now, chapter 2 gets practical. What do you say? What's your story? And what do you value? Lemmons opens chapter 2, your messaging, your story, and your values with a quote that is branding in one sentence. It's not just what you know or who you know, it's who wants to know you. That's influence. And influence is built when people believe 1, you're real, 2, you're consistent, 3, you're valuable to their life. Lemmons talks about the discomfort that can come from telling your story, insecurities, fear, imposter syndrome, energy, and how stories become powerful, though, when they're used to help others. And again, let me add the integrity layer. There is a difference between learned vulnerability, which is purposeful, wise, and human, and reckless oversharing, content for attention that costs you later. Brand strength is not tell everything. Brand strength is tell the truth with wisdom. So let's talk about the whole values equal decision filter. Lemmons says values give you a baseline. They help you make decisions, and he even lists examples of values teams use: excellence, integrity, leadership, humility, perseverance, responsibility, and more. That's huge for NIL and pros because most bad deals aren't illegal, they're misaligned. If you don't name your values, you'll rent someone else's. Lemmons also gives us a simple illustration. Consistency is memorable, inconsistency confuses people, and confusion kills trust. And I want to say that again, right? Consistency is memorable, inconsistency confuses people, and confusion kills trust. So this is where I put my proverbial professor glasses on, right? Your brand is a theme, not a random anthology. If every post, every appearance, every partnership is a different version of you, the audience can't hold on to you. And if the audience can't hold on to you, brands won't either. Chapter 2 also leans into this idea. Stop shrinking yourself to fit stereotypes. If you're a football player who loves anime or a hooper who loves philosophy, own it, because distinct beats generic every time. Here's the pro level takeaway from these chapters. If brand is what's left when the game quiets down, then brand building is not vanity, it's risk management. Injury risk, performance variance, team changes, league politics, market cycles, reputation shocks. Brand is how you stay valuable when the stat line dips. Now, let me connect this directly to my own mission right now. As many of you know, I passed the MiLB certification exam in September in order to officially be an agent. And in order to officially be an agent, I have to sign a player for representation within a certain number of years, which tells you how hard this is to do, right? So I'm too old to wait 3 or 4 years to sign a player. So I have developed my 6-month action plan to sign an MiLB or an MLB player. So if Lemmons is right that attention plus narrative plus trust are the currency, which he is, then my strategy as an agent can't just be I'm available. It has to be I'm the trusted authority athletes want to know because I protect money, protect reputation, and build legacy. So here's how these chapters plug into this plan. And I'm sharing this with you to just basically say, yeah, I'm practicing what I'm preaching right here. So messaging, I'm not an agent, I'm a brand and contract protection system with legal teeth, which is chapter 2 in motion. My story, I'm a former athlete and professor and attorney and faith and integrity first. That's a coherent narrative athletes can trust. Values, integrity isn't a vibe, it's a filter for my whole life. I'm not chasing every deal. I'm building a roster of aligned people and principles. The 4 is consistency. Every week, content, education, credibility. If we want a player to trust us with their career, they need to see me, they need to see Michael show up like a professional before we ever get the call. And then bringing Coach Prime in, thermostat. Coach Prime style, right? Set the environment daily. This is about routine and intentionality, not random hustle. So yes, this book is for athletes, but it's also a blueprint for agents who want to be worthy of representing those athletes. So to wrap up chapter 2, here is chapter 2's core thesis from Lemmons through my Chalk Talk lens. You already have a brand, you just might not be driving it. Careers are short, attention fades, and identity needs depth. Your stories and values aren't fluff, they are strategy. Consistency builds trust, confusion kills it, and integrity keeps your brand from becoming a cardboard cutout. Next in the book is chapter 3. Followers plus engagement equal everything you need. And I already have thoughts because some of y'all are chasing followers like their salvation. Spoiler, they're not. But they are leverage when you steward them right. Understanding is power and power is responsibility. All right, chapter 3, followers plus engagement equals everything you need. And chapter 3 is where Lemmons turns the lights on and makes athletes face the real math of influence. Followers plus engagement. Not because we worship numbers, but because numbers are the receipt for attention, and attention is the doorway to opportunity. A quick timestamp note here before we jump in. This book was published in 2020. So as we move through Lemmons examples, I'm going to give quick today updates where the names, teams, and platforms have changed because the principles hold. Everything that Lemmons says in this book holds, but the context has evolved a little bit. Lemmons' big idea in this chapter, chapter 3, is simple. A big following without engagement is like a stadium full of people and nobody can hear you. You're visible, but not connected. Engagement is where trust is built. Engagement is where loyalty is built. And engagement is where NIL deals and endorsement decisions and long-term influence actually happen. And because y'all know I can't separate branding from integrity, engagement is also a character test. If you only speak when you need something, people feel that. If you only post when you're selling, people feel that. If you only acknowledge supporters when you're trending, people feel that too. Integrity isn't just don't lie. Integrity is consistency, it's care, it's showing up like you said you would. Lemmons pushes back on the obsession with follower count alone. Yes, you need reach, but reach is potential. Engagement is conversion. Engagement tells the world this isn't just a crowd, this is a community. Followers are your audience size. Engagement is your relationship strength. 1,000 people who trust you will outperform 100,000 people who don't know you from a random scroll. So here's a nerdy way to remember this, right? Followers are potential energy. Engagement is kinetic energy. If you're not engaging, you're basically a battery in a drawer, full of power, nothing moving. Right? Okay. Then Lemmons gets into brand loyalty, how it's created when people feel seen and valued, and that it's not marketing fluff. That's human nature. People want to belong to something. They want to support people who are real. So you're not building an audience, you're building a community that has an emotional reason to stick with you. The practical application, engagement does not mean you have to reply to every single comment forever. That's not realistic. But you do need a system. 5 minutes a day, 3 replies, 1 thoughtful comment on someone else's post, 1 thank you. Consistency beats intensity. The algorithm changes, discipline doesn't. Lemmons uses big examples to show how loyalty works at scale. Athletes whose platforms remain strong even when controversy, setbacks, or time hits. The takeaway isn't be famous. The takeaway is build trust so your brand isn't so fragile that one bad week breaks it. So now let's talk about some specific examples that I flagged in the book because chapter 3 leans on young athlete momentum and early visibility. So one of the first people that Malcolm mentions is Zion Williamson as an example of the modern athlete whose attention and cultural gravity showed up early, long before pro results could even speak. Now, the update to what's in this book is that Zion was drafted #1 overall in the 2019 draft, and he plays for the New Orleans Pelicans. So when Lemmons points in this book to Zion's trajectory and predicting the magnitude and influence of his brand value, that's exactly how it played out. The machine of attention that formed around Zion wasn't accidental. It was a perfect storm of talent, narrative, highlights, and internet amplification. Lemmons' point lands even harder now. If the spotlight hits you early, you need character that can hold it. Attention without discipline is just a faster way to fall. Then Lemmons, he brings up youth names like Jalen Huff and Maxwell Young to show how early visibility can create opportunity long before a player hits the biggest stage. So here are your reality checks. Jalen Huff has continued on a legit football path and has a recruiting presence. Bunchy Young is no longer just a viral youth sensation. He's grown into the recruiting ecosystem too. The deeper lesson is the same in 2025 as it was in 2020. Early attention can open doors, but development has to walk through them. And families, coaches, mentors, this is where integrity and stability matter most. The internet will hype a kid like they're already paid. That's dangerous. So you have to root the identity deeper than comments and clout. Lemmons also used Simone Biles as an example of consistent excellence and sustained influence. And, an update on what Lemmons has in this book. Of course, her brand didn't just remain, it has expanded. Her legacy conversation has grown in the 5 years since this book was published. We had the Paris 2024 Olympics performance reinforced that excellence can evolve, return, and deepen. She is a masterclass in how trust is built. Results, yes, but also authenticity, consistency, and a story that has meaning beyond medals. So the moral of chapter 3 is not chase followers. The moral is build loyalty. Your followers are not numbers, they're people, and the way you treat them becomes your brand. If you take nothing else from this chapter, take this. Attention gets you seen, engagement gets you trusted, and trust gets you paid, ethically, sustainably, and with less regret. So that's chapter 3. Chapter 4 is entitled How to Use Leverage in Social Media Platforms. And in this chapter, Lemmons is getting extremely practical. How do you actually use platforms in a way that builds influence instead of wasting time? He opens with a reality we all live in. Social media has changed how we communicate, how we buy, and how we relate. And he makes a point I love. These apps are undervalued tools, meaning most people use them to consume, compare, and spiral. But athletes have something a lot of people don't. They have structure. They have training, film, practice, recovery, competition, routine. Lemmons' advice is essentially use the structure you already have and document the journey. And again, I'm going to add my Coach Prime seasoning here. Set the thermostat. Don't let the algorithm set your mood. Don't let comments set your identity. You decide the standard daily. Discipline is what makes content sustainable. Hype is what makes it inconsistent. One of the most useful ideas in this chapter is the document versus create mindset. You don't have to manufacture a persona. You just need to document your reality, your routine, your discipline, your behind the scenes, your values, your process. Athletes naturally have content if they're intentional. And from a faith perspective, documenting isn't vanity when it's stewardship. If your platform encourages one kid to keep going, to stay grounded, to stay disciplined, that's impact. Now, platform updates matter here. So when Lemmons says Twitter, we know we are now talking about X, and I'm so bad about that, I still call it Twitter. And the culture has shifted, but the core lesson remains. Twitter is, see, I just did it. X is fast, reactive, and powerful. It can build your voice or bury you in 5 minutes. So the platform rule is simple. Don't post anything you wouldn't want read aloud in a negotiation to a coach, to a recruiter, to your mom, and to ESPN on the same day, because the internet does not forget and screenshots don't care what you meant. Lemmons discusses the way authenticity can increase engagement and trust. He references Kevin Love's openness about mental health as an example of truth-building connection. An update on Kevin, he's currently with the Utah Jazz. So, team context changes, but the lesson doesn't. Authenticity, handled wisely, creates deeper relationships with supporters. It shows humanity. And from an integrity angle, when you tell the truth with courage and with boundaries, you build a brand that isn't dependent on perfection. Then Lemmons talks about Facebook and the idea of athletes using fan pages to scale. Here's my modern translation. Facebook isn't always the cool platform, but it's still a reach platform, especially for communities, parents, local press, and the people who often control opportunities like camps, clinics, appearances, and local brand deals. Athletes chasing visibility should not ignore the grown-ups. The grown-ups have the checkbooks. That's not shade, that's economics. That's not shade, that's economics. Then we get to Instagram. Lemmons treats Instagram as a visual-first platform where athletes can build connection beyond highlights. Personality, routine, values, lifestyle, behind the scenes. That is still true, but here's the key update. IGTV is no longer a standalone focus. Instagram moved away from IGTV and pushed video towards Reels and unified Instagram video formats. So when you get this book and you read it, whenever Lemmons says IGTV, translate it to consistent short-form video, repeatable series content, and behind-the-scenes storytelling that feels real. And this matters for NIL at every level, including pros. Because Reels and short-form video aren't just entertainment. They're proof of personality, proof of consistency, proof of community. Brands aren't just buying your highlight reel anymore, they're buying your trust loop. Lemmons also points athletes towards LinkedIn, and I'm going to underline this with a highlighter the size of Texas. Athletes sleep on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is where you demonstrate identity beyond the sport. Interest, projects, leadership, business curiosity, community involvement. That matters for internships, post-career doors, long-term partnerships, and serious brand relationships. It's not less fun, it's just a different room. And successful people know how to speak in different rooms without becoming a different person. Now, another update that I flagged in the book, Josh Hart is with the New York Knicks. Again, teams change, but the bigger point stays. Your platform belongs to you, jerseys change, markets change, your brand, if it's real, travels with you. And now I'm going to tie this back into my own 6-month action plan to sign an MLB or an MILB player, because this is all not theoretical for me either. If I'm asking a player to trust me with their career, my content and my platform presence have to prove 3 things before I ever send a DM or an email. 1, I understand the business. 2, I protect athletes legally and strategically. And 3, I don't play games with integrity. So I have to use the platforms the way Lemmons is teaching athletes to use them. Consistency, education, engagement, and trust. Because players don't just sign agents, just like brands don't sign athletes. They sign the person who just sign athletes, right? They sign the person whose standards don't shift when the numbers shift. That's chapter 4. We've modernized the platforms, updated the examples, and kept the core truth. Your brand is being built in real time. The only question is whether you're stewarding it with purpose. Chapter 5 is entitled Things Athletes Should Never Do Online. And this is the chapter where Lemmons basically grabs the steering wheel and says, okay, before we talk about monetizing your brand, we need to talk about not detonating it. Because the hard truth is this, athletes keep getting in trouble online, not because they're necessarily bad people, but because the internet is a permanent courtroom with a 24/7 jury, and people love evidence. Lemmons opens this chapter by asking why we keep seeing athletes get into social media trouble, even though the majority of athletes now grew up with these platforms. And his answer is blunt. Access is not the same as wisdom. Knowing how to post isn't the same as knowing what not to post. He uses a quote comparing social media to AAU exposure camps, because exposure camps don't just show your strengths, they show your weaknesses. Social media does the exact same thing. It reveals your opinions, your anger, your impulsiveness, your lack of discipline, if that's what you've got. Now, this is where we tie in our integrity episodes and the character clause worldview. Integrity just isn't about doing the right thing. It's about being the same person online that you are offline. And if you're not the same person, the internet will eventually introduce those two versions of you to each other very publicly. And I've got to have a little aside here. I don't, for a perfect example of this, I don't think we need to look any further than the debacle that happened after the Heisman Trophy announcement last week. I won't name names, but I think we all probably know what I'm referring to. The two versions have to match up, right? So Lemmons says the wrong approach is telling athletes just don't use social media. That's fear-based, that's avoidance, and it doesn't work. The right approach is education, learning the nuances of these platforms so you can be transparent without being reckless. That's a life principle, honestly. Scripture doesn't call us to hide from responsibility, it calls us to walk in wisdom. Stewardship, discipline, guarding what's been entrusted to you. Then Lemmons makes a point that every athlete needs to hear. If you have a big following, someone is always watching you closely. And there are literally people at companies whose job it is to monitor athletes' profiles and catch mistakes. And when the mistake is exposed, it follows you, not just for a week, not just for a season, sometimes for life. So let me say this as your agent big sister, in my agent big sister voice, right? You are not just posting, you are publishing. And publishing has consequences. Next, Lemmons goes into the specific never-do list. The first category he hits is anything racist, gender offensive, or sexually insensitive, even if you think it's a joke. He stresses how sensitive these issues are and how social norms shift over time. Something that was tolerated in the past might be career-ending now. And he gives the most practical rule in the whole chapter. If you're unsure, don't do it. Because all it takes is one person seeing it the wrong way, and that's it. And here's my biblical slant. Your words are seeds. You plant them, they grow. You don't get to control who eats the fruit. Lemmons also warns about jumping into touchy public debates, politics, religion, current events, because of the friction and the backlash they can create, especially when you have young followers and brand relationships at stake. Now, let me be clear. Faith is not something I hide. But wisdom matters. There's a difference between being principled and being impulsive. There's a difference between speaking with purpose and posting because you're mad. That's the pick the right time to speak out point Lemmons makes. Be wise, think about how people might respond, understand the line you're walking. He then gives examples of how one post can become a lifelong headline. He mentions the Greek Olympian, I'm so going to mess up this name, the Greek Olympian Vula Papachristou, I'm putting it on the screen because I know I just said that wrong, being kicked off her national team for a tweet mocking migrants. One tweet, and it followed her. He talks about Josh Hader, old tweets resurfacing, and even with an apology, those words leave a mark. And then he broadens it. Don't post personal content you don't want people talking about later. Don't reveal images or videos of smoking, drinking, explicit scenes, anything that can boomerang. Not because you're not allowed to live, but because not everyone around you has as much to lose as you do, and not everyone around you has your best interest in mind. That's a leadership lesson. That's a Coach Prime lesson too, because Prime's whole brand is standards. You don't have to be perfect, but you do have to be disciplined. And if you're building a legacy, you can't keep volunteering for chaos. Then Lemmons hits something athletes don't want to hear, but absolutely need. Who you hang around matters. What's in the photo reflects you. Not just you, it reflects your teammates, your coaches, your organization, your family. And he asks those key questions. Are these people a good reflection of what you want your brand to be about? Do they have as much to lose as you do? Do they care about reputation like you do? That's a Proverbs level wisdom right there. You don't get the fruit of your destiny while ignoring the soil of your environment. Then he says something else I love, because this is team culture and integrity in one sentence. What happens in the locker room needs to stay in the locker room. Don't record it, don't tweet it, don't leak internal drama. The team is family, and family business stays in the family. He even gives an example about the Warriors having a serious health scare and how nothing leaked because elite organizations protect the inside. this was years ago, but still, this right here connects directly to the integrity and leadership episodes we've done. Because a lot of scandals don't start with a huge crime. They start with lax standards, loose lips, people performing for the internet instead of protecting the mission. Now Lemmons gets very specific. Never go back and forth with haters or fans, because responding, one, validates them, it gives their comment life, and it often backfires. He uses Jermaine Whitehead as an example. He responded with slurs and threats, and the Browns cut him quickly. He references Kevin Durant getting caught with a fake account that he used to respond to critics. That was embarrassing, messy, and unnecessary. And then he drops a Mark Twain quote, which makes my English professor heart very happy, about never arguing with a fool because onlookers may not be able to tell the difference. That's not just social media advice, that's life advice. Then Lemmons closes with a tone shift into gratitude and character. Don't take playing sports for granted. Have class. Act like you know you're fortunate to be where you are. And he points to Steph Curry as an example of a player with values, a clean public image, community leadership, and strong character. Someone who attracts opportunity because there's nothing messy to attach to his name. And then comes the line that should haunt you in a good way. Your brand starts before it ever gets to social media. Social media is just an extension. It magnifies who you really are. Negative moments get highlighted faster than positive ones. So let that be your guiding point before any post, picture, or tweet. Your digital footprint is due diligence. A club, a brand, a sponsor, a league, everybody is watching. Yes, I always feel like somebody's watching me in my head right now. So this chapter is Lemmons telling athletes, don't hand your enemies free ammunition. So the takeaway from chapter 5 is simple. Don't be scared of social media. Be skilled, be wise, be disciplined, be consistent, and let your online presence match your real life character, because that's where legacy comes from. Why Every Athlete Needs Their Own Platform is the title of chapter 6, and it is one of the most important chapters in this entire book because it's not really about content, it's about control. Lemmons starts with something we all recognize. Whenever a story gets told by someone other than the source, details shift. Even when people mean well, perception and interpretation change the message. And when your name is the headline, you don't get to act surprised when someone else frames your narrative in a way that benefits them instead of you. That's why this chapter hits so hard. As an athlete, you are the horse's mouth, right? But the world will still try to quote everybody around you, coaches, friends, trainers, sources close to, because it's easier for the media machine. And over time, athletes get frustrated and go quiet because their words get misconstrued or their actions get taken out of context. So here's Lemmons' solution. Build something you own. A website, a platform, a home base where your story is told in your words, with your context, without people adding interference and interjection. And I want to tie this directly into our integrity episodes. Ownership, again, is not ego. Ownership is protection. Ownership is stewardship. Biblically, stewardship is one of the most consistent themes in Scripture. You don't own your gifts in the ultimate sense. You're entrusted with them. And you'll be held accountable for how you manage what you were given. That's the talent, the influence, the platform, the money, the opportunities. If you treat your voice like a toy, the world will treat your career like a toy too. Now, Lemmons uses two landmark examples here. LeBron James and Uninterrupted, and Derek Jeter's The Players Tribune. Now, I went and looked, got a brief update here on what's happened with these two things since 2020. Uninterrupted is still very much alive as an athlete storytelling brand. Its site is active, its store is active, and it continues producing athlete-centered content, including shows and podcasts. The Players Tribune is also active and publishing. Now, it's now owned by Minute Media after being acquired in late 2019. And because media consolidation is real life, not conspiracy, the Players Tribune sits in a larger portfolio where distribution and business strategy aren't just athlete voice. They're also ad models, partnerships, and scale. Lemmons makes a key distinction that a lot of athletes miss. Uninterrupted and the Players Tribune help athletes tell stories, but athletes don't necessarily own those platforms outright, and they don't own the infrastructure. So the principle is those are megaphones, but what you need is a home, because if your megaphone gets shut off, rebranded, throttled, banned, demonetized, or replaced by the next trend, you don't want to be homeless. And if you want proof that the platform can change overnight, here's your 2022 to now reminder. Twitter's now X. The world keeps moving. So why does having your own website matter? Lemmons says a website gives you the freedom to express yourself how you want, when you want, without someone blocking you from being you. It consolidates your information for fans and potential partners, your stats, photos, goals, updates, contact points, so people don't have to guess what you're about. And this is where I put on my business hat. Your website is the headquarters for your brand. Social media, think of them like the street team. Your website is also your credibility filter. If an executive at a company hears your name, searches you, and finds a clean home base that looks intentional, updated, and professional, your odds of opportunity go way up. Lemmons even gives an example of an athlete leveraging online presence into commercials and consulting. Then he drops a sentence that should be tattooed on every athlete's brain, metaphorically. Okay, please don't go get DNS on your forehead. Ownership is everything, because if Instagram, X, Snapchat, or YouTube disappeared tomorrow, a lot of people would lose their audience and not know what to do next. Lemmon compares the internet to real estate. If you rely only on rented land, you're still at the mercy of the landlord. And from a legal lens, he's right. You don't own your social profile, but you can own a domain name. You can own your mailing list. You can own your content archive. You can own your IP strategy. That's the grown-up version of NIL. Not just name, image, and likeness, also control, leverage, and longevity. Quite surprisingly to me, Lemmons moved on to email next. Lemmons talks about email marketing like it's a lost art. And you know, I realized he's right. Most people ignore email because inboxes are flooded. But he makes a brilliant point. The open rate changes when the email is from someone you actually want to hear from. He gives examples. Imagine being a freshman in high school and getting an email from, Mookie Betts or Michael Jordan or whatever. You would have opened it. So here's the lesson. Athletes don't realize how powerful direct communication is because they're chasing the algorithm instead of building a relationship. Email is old school, but it's also owned, and that's the point. Biblical parallel, we talked about this last week, right? Let your yes be your yes. Consistency builds trust. If you show up every week with something of value, encouragement, insight, updates, giveaways, community invites, you're not just building a fan base, you're building a relationship. Then Lemmons goes into humanizing the athlete. He says, athletes get treated like superheroes, and it's easy to get intoxicated by the flattery. But the truth is, you feel fear, fatigue, anger, and pain just like anyone else. And he makes a culturally sharp point. In this era, it can actually be good to humanize yourself because people connect with humanity. He uses Michael Phelps as an example. Phelps had that infamous moment, owned it, apologized, and by addressing it, he quickly regained trust. And Lemmons says something that sounds harsh, but is deeply true. People want to know whether you can admit when you're wrong. That's straight integrity work. Repentance is not just a church word, it's a leadership skill. Accountability, correction, and growth. Lemmons closes this chapter by saying this isn't a knock on companies like the Players Tribune and Uninterrupted. Those platforms helped ignite athlete storytelling as a priority. But one-off stories aren't enough to stay relevant. The world is loud, attention is a war. So athletes need both quality and quantity. And the only way to control that consistently is to own what you're putting out. He asks the questions athletes should ask themselves. Am I putting myself in a position to be remembered? Am I building authentic relationships? Am I connecting deeply enough to get people to react? Will I matter when my athletic career is over? Then he points to examples of athletes investing in media empires and brand transitions. Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Jay Williams, right? All of these guys have done that. Kevin Durant's current team situation is a perfect reminder that careers move fast, but your platform should travel with you. right? Steph Curry is still the Golden State Warriors cornerstone, still a model of sustained excellence and brand strength, right? And Jay Williams has been an ESPN analyst for years, proof that even a short playing window can become a long media career if you build the right platform and voice. So Lemmons ends with the mic drop, right? This is about content and media, but more importantly, it's about owning your IP and using it the way you want to. The time is now to own your platform, image, and likeness because the athlete window is small. And this, again, is exactly where Coach Prime's worldview plugs in. Standards, consistency, and controlling your narrative with substance, not noise. We've said it in our Chalk Tub Book Club episodes, our Fast Breaks, and the Integrity series. The world will always offer you shortcuts, but shortcuts don't build legacy. Discipline does. So the takeaway from Chapter 6 is this. Social media is rented land. Owned platforms are legacy land, and stewardship is the difference between a moment and a ministry.